Oh, the Western.
So I go, my wife,
That's pretty cool. Have they gone before?
They have.
They have, okay.
So
yeah,
it's
she gets
actually
invited to a
my
wedding.
husband
She's
went
like,
to
let's go.
Oh, that's fun.
That's just something. Go to your
So we're up to right now. It's been so- Bless you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look at his wedding. Where he comes to say, at his wedding.
Yeah, I saw it.
He was first Unitarian church, and I had a target out that way. But I was like, I mean, I had never met the bride was just some, is now the executive director of this place that my wife works very closely. So I had, I was like, oh. So I walk in and then
Yeah.
he's there. And,
I saw, I just.
there's another guy who's done housing inspections on
So then I went quickly back to the
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know we're not, yeah.
The first word guy who replaced Sabra. Yeah. So meanwhile, so my wife's is a fun, she does a lot of so she attends her first meeting in parks. She comes to me, she's like, it's a lousy $110,000. And I'm like, well, it's the optics and the rest of it. So she's got a bug up her ass about that, so that's gonna be interesting to see. She's like, well, we should go out and get grants. And I'm like, well, I don't know how that works. And I don't know, if it was me and I owned, I always think this way, if I owned Dow Chemical, I would start an environmental
I bet not.
justice
Yeah,
law.
I bet
You
not.
know? Right? So I mean, I don't know who to do, whatever, and I don't think it takes
Come
that
on,
kind of
come
thing,
on.
but I gotta say, there's a lot of disappointment with people like, what,
So summer has begun. You're upright. Take your food by mouth.
yeah. I mean, there may be some opportunities there. I mean, ultimately, my sense, I mean, you know better.
This is, yeah, cobbled together instead of ad hoc kind of deal.
Basically $0 from the general fund, right? It was just the idea that all of a sudden we're gonna have a $4 million budget for a park. It didn't look right.
Oh, that's, wow. How long did it go? Just a week? Month.
Yeah. So play that out first. Play that out. I mean, it could be a little less fancy than it was, that's for sure.
Let's just say we now have quorum, right?
Yeah, you do have quorum, and I know that Carolina emailed shortly ago, said she wouldn't be here, Ruth isn't here, and Bob's not here.
And neither,
Bob's-
and Mike is always 5 minutes late. So let's start.
Okay.
So welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2017 meeting of the City of Ann Arbor Park Advisory Commission. It's a little bit after 4 o'clock, and we're here in council chambers in City Hall. Colin, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Jackson,
Here?
Commissioner Gallardi, Commissioner Santa Croce,
Here.
Commissioner Morrison,
Here.
Commissioner Kraut, Commissioner Borgsdorf.
Here.
Commissioner Ramaswamy, Commissioner London,
Here?
Commissioner Apple, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item C, you have agenda before you. Any changes, additions, corrections? Hearing none. Moving on. Item D, public commentary, 3 minutes, limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we're moving on. Item E, approval of the minutes of the May 16th, 2017 PAC meeting, which were posted on Registar and attached to your agendas. Changes, additions, and/or in motion.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Awesome. Moving on, item F, special presentations. I'm going to murder this. Josh Meisler? Meisler?
Yes,
Which one?
Meisler.
Meisler. So neither, you could have said. Option C, from the Friends of the Ann Arbor Skate Park. This is their annual update. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you all for giving us the time to kind of update you on what's going on with Friends of Ann Arbor Skate Park and the skate park itself. And I'll take a couple minutes to very briefly talk about where we came from, where we are now, and what our future plans are. Friends of Ann Arbor Skate Park is a grassroots organization that was organized in the mid-2000s to advocate for and fundraise to build a public, free skateboarding facility here in the city of Ann Arbor. In 2010, we were granted 501c3 nonprofit status, and around 2013, we completed our fundraising work with the help of the city, the state, and the county, as well as a lot of private donors. We completed fundraising and broke ground on the skate park, which opened on June 21st, 2014. Our nonprofit mission to promote and preserve the Ann Arbor Skate Park as a permanent, free, public resource. And some of our guiding principles as an organization to be ambassadors of skateboarding, acting in the interest of skateboarders, promoters of the park, committed to the preservation of the park, community leadership, and proponents of accessibility, diversity, and inclusion, and of course, champions of health and fun. I'm Josh Meisler. I've been on the board of directors serving as president for 3 years now, and our other current board members. So a couple of things that have been happening that I'd like to draw your attention to since the park opened. We've been focusing on, refocusing our organization on our mission of promoting inclusion, upkeep, and accessibility to the park, and we've started a couple programs towards those ends. We run a program called the All Girls Skate, which takes place twice a month, Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. We have volunteer instructors, and we provide equipment, including skateboards and protective equipment. And all girls and females, women are invited to come and be a part of these bi-monthly events with the mission of creating a safe space for girls and women of all levels to be a part of skateboarding and form some community around it. We were granted funds for the program in 2 years by the Community Foundation Youth Council, and we used those funds to hire instructors and to get equipment together. This year we've moved towards a kind of a volunteer and self-sustaining model for it. We see a really wonderful, up to 30 or 40 girls, young women, older women all together, and we have a range of skills and abilities. So it's really becoming a self-perpetuating program. Skateboarding is very much about peer-to-peer help. It's not about, not so much about lessons and things like that. And so we've really seen that kind of flourish with the All Girls Skate program, which we're really proud of. And you're all invited to come check out. Those are some of the girls from the first year of the program. We're in our 3rd year now. Another program that we're proud of along the lines of increasing access and use to the park is our Skate Park Scholarship Equipment Scholarship Program, where we provide equipment, protective gear, and also bus passes to kids who are old enough to ride the bus by themselves, to young people 7 through 17 who live in the county of Washtenaw, who might not otherwise have the opportunity to take advantage of this public resource. The first couple years, we've given away almost 40 complete sets along with bus passes. This year, again, we'll be giving away, hopefully, 20. We've received funding from some local foundations to help keep this program going. And again, we're really proud of it. some of the kids who have received their stuff over the years, and a nice thank you card that we received, which is precious and treasured by us. Some other things that are happening at the park. I think that the most exciting thing about the park is the kind of culture that has really grown up around it. It's not a surprise to those of us who have been a part of skateboarding for many years, but there's always someone at the park. It's heavily used. And there's a great kind of culture of ownership over the facility amongst the users. For example, there have been hardly any incidents of vandalism. One of the very rare incidents occurred about 2 months ago. Somebody came out and put some spray paint up on the walls, and within hours, the kids and the young people and the adults who used the park together had kind of started a social media discussion about this incident, and also started cleaning it themselves. And so there were probably a dozen people of a range of ages out there that day scrubbing the park. And the fact that it is rarely, if ever, vandalized, I think speaks to just the strong culture of ownership and kind of love for the space that has really developed there. A couple things that we're proud of. We partnered with the University Musical Society last fall for their season opening event, which featured kind of world-renowned jazz players, including Jason Moran, as well as world-renowned skateboarders in a music and athletic improvisation together. The music playing off of the riders and the riders playing off of the music. There was easily 3,000 people at the park that day. A lot of people who had never been to the Ann Arbor Skate Park before, who had maybe never seen skateboarding the way it was done that day. And similarly, a lot of people who had never heard music like that before, and a lot of people who hadn't been exposed to that kind of event. And that was just a great example of our wishes and hopes for this park space kind of coming to fruition around that collaboration. We look forward to more exciting and kind of community building events at the park. There's been a nonprofit, a fundraiser in the name of, in the memory to celebrate the life of an Ann Arbor local named Dave Tuck, who was a big part of the skateboarding culture in this town and kind of across the country. Every year we raise several $1,000s in his name for another nonprofit organization which cares for families who need to travel to get treatment for cancer. And so it's another example of kind of wonderful community things happening around this locality of this skate park. There are more and more public events being scheduled there, and that's going to continue. It's really well known as the premier public facility in the state of Michigan, and we're very proud of that. People travel from, we see people from a long way away who are stopping to ride the park that we all built together. So moving forward, our mission is really in part about maintenance and upkeep at this point. The park we're in our 4th season. People ride this park all year round, and so there's been a certain amount of wear and tear, and we partner with the city, the Parks Department, to make sure the park stays in a really excellent condition. And we're also getting into the period where, through the weather on the 4 seasons we have, it's getting into some kind of routine maintenance. And again, together with parks, we're working towards anticipating and kind of implementing the repairs and maintenance that are going to be necessary to maintain it as such a high quality facility as it is. One of the things that we're working towards is a fundraising campaign around providing lights at the park. The park is used 4 seasons around, and we are losing quite a number of hours during the fall and spring and even in the winter. If you come by in February and the concrete is dry, there will be kids riding it. And so we would like to see lights installed at the park to make it that much more useful and get that much more, public enjoyment out of the park all year round. That's something that we've been in discussions with, again, with the Parks Department around the feasibility of it, and we're looking for some examples of what the costs will be, and to kind of build a strategy around making that our next real capital campaign. We have a vision of a permanent presence on the ground in the park for the Friends of the Ann Arbor Skate Park, kind of along the lines of a pro shop where lessons could be available, snacks and equipment could also be available. And again, Colin and his team have been very supportive and helpful in us trying to figure out how that might eventually look for the skate park. And again, keeping our maintenance together. Our one fear about the park, which has had no basis in fact to this point, is that we wouldn't maintain it. It would fall out of disrepair, fall out of use, and that would become a self-perpetuating situation. There's no sign or sight of that happening at this time, and we're really gratified for the support of the city and the support of all of the community members who have really made this park happen and maintained it as such a kind of exciting and wonderful place. And if there are any questions, I would be more than glad to answer them, and if not, thank you very much for the time.
I had a quick question about the lighting project. What is your proposed budget for that?
I don't have a proposed budget for it yet. Right now, we're in conversation with people who have parks that have been lit in similar climates as ours. We're looking, some of us would love to imagine a solar source for it, but we haven't gotten bids or estimates yet. We're in the middle of those conversations, and I'd be more than glad to update this commission as we move along that project.
Yeah, it's kind of the very early days of looking into this, and one thing that we'll also explore is we have the lighting in place, obviously, for the baseball fields and the softball fields there, and if there's an opportunity to work those together somehow.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
I have just a comment.
Please.
I think it's great that you guys are turning your mission more towards the education and inclusivity, and my family and I attended the Falling Up and Getting Down event,
great.
and I've never skateboarded, and my kids are way too little to skateboard, but we had so much fun that day watching, and so kudos to you guys for a
I'm
great
so
event.
glad. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. Alan?
Yeah, my comment is, I completely agree with what you said. There were a number of silly concerns that were raised at the outset of establishing the park. None of those, in my mind, have been realized. It's been a really great, positive place as far as I've seen, and a disused area of the park is now extremely well used, and that's exactly what we like to see, so that's great.
Thank you.
Staff would agree with that, certainly. I mean, Veterans Park is extremely visible, to people in the city and to people who visit it, and to have it activated to kind of the level it is now because of this, I think is just a very, very positive reflection, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Moving on, item G, new business. G1, resolution to recommend routing this is like a tongue twister. Resolution to recommend routing raw water main through Barton Nature Area. Glenn with Zurich?
With Zurich, but thank you, that's good with that.
Close enough?
Yes.
And Becky
Gaius.
Gajewski. All right, I'm 0 for 3 tonight. Please step forward. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you come on.
Come on up.
I can start just by giving a quick review from where we were at the last meeting. So this is actually a continuation of the conversation that started at the MAPAC meeting. The resolution requests that PAC support the routing of a water main through the Barton nature area. And as we discussed at the last meeting, there was involvement throughout with natural area preservation. And it was NAP's determination really that have a look at my notes here, that the route is the best option with the minimal amount of impact to the natural areas. And throughout construction, they will be involved with the design and construction review. So if there's anything that comes up that would be of concern to NAP, be addressed at that stage. So the question is kind of, why is PAC so involved? And we spoke a little bit about that at the last meeting, but it actually goes back to 2007. There was a council resolution which designated the Barton nature area as a preserve. And at that time, council resolved that that there couldn't be any capital improvements or site work or grading done to a nature preserve. That resolution from 2007 was amended in 2016 to allow for capital projects and improvements that are generally acceptable to improve water quality and community benefits, among other examples, so long as it's supported by PAC. So that's really the two reasons it would be here as a project anyway, because it's in a park, but in this particular instance, because it's in a preserve and it's a capital project, it requires support to move ahead.
You want to add stuff?
I will, if I could, was everybody here last time? Because I certainly don't.
I was not.
Okay. Could I respectfully ask then what the commission here would like? I had a presentation last time. I don't propose that I go through it again. Should I give a quick overview of the project?
I think a really quick overview
Yeah.
of the project in
Okay.
terms of, would be
You might
great.
want to tie it to the maps. So
Yeah.
he's responsible for the two
Okay.
maps in front of you.
All right, thank you for that feedback. So, very quickly, the city has a couple sources of raw water that feed the water treatment plant and ultimately distribute water to the customers throughout the city. And one of the raw water pipes runs in this area. It runs through one of the embankments at the dam. It's over 100 years old. There are maintenance issues. There's a discovered leak. It's exceeded its service life. It is beyond the time to replace this pipe due to the critical nature and the stability of the dam. So there was a study undertaken. We investigated several possible routes to install a new pipe to replace this one. And the short of it is, through these different scenarios, we came up with the preferred and the recommended route, which is shown in this aerial view here, which starts in the Barton Pond. It passes completely around the embankments, holding back the Barton Pond. So it doesn't get the federal government involved, who oversees, they regulate these embankments, they regulate the dam. We completely avoid the regulations involved in that. We avoid the stability concerns of the embankment, passing a pipe through an embankment holding the entire pond back. In the sketch, it shows that it passes underneath the railroad, from the pond underneath the railroad, through the corner of the nature preserve, underneath the Huron River and ultimately to the Barton Pump Station. The other sketch, the other photo shows the overview of the preserve, and I put a little red circle showing really where the area is that we're impacting. And this photo here is NAP's scoring system priority area, ranking the quality of the park and the vegetation and the condition there. So it's a lower ranking score, I
It is.
believe.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything to this?
Sure. I mean, if I take a
Yeah.
quick look at that. So the area where the project will be going through is a priority 4, and our ranking goes from 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest quality. We definitely want to protect this area, and 5 being the lowest quality. So on NAP's scale, it's on the lower end of quality, so we're not too concerned about a project happening here and the impact it will have on the vegetation.
The sketch reflects, going back to this aerial here, it reflects NAP's feedback and their goals and what they're looking to save and the most preferred route. From a timeline standpoint, we're projecting that this entire project is about 1.5 years, but the impact to this area with the circle, the impact to the preserve is maybe on the order of 8 to 12 months, probably. We have every intent of keeping the pedestrian bridge open, so the main trail across the Huron River, the main trail through the park, would remain open and accessible to the public. And safety is attempted to be maximized and disturbance minimized, and I hope that's a quick enough
I think that's
overview.
probably sufficient. Other
Okay.
questions?
Just to, I guess, clarify what you said, Colin, it sounds like since it is in this natural area,
Yep.
there is some sort of restriction as to our ability to say yes to things. If it's a capital improvement, it has to be one or the other or both of what, water quality and community benefits?
Yeah, I can actually, if you don't mind, I'll read you the part of the resolution as it was amended in 2016 by council. Let's see. Whereas the resolution from 2007 resolves that the city will not build upon, develop, or grade parkland designated as preserved for any purpose, including athletic fields or facilities or off-trail uses, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas at times there are identified capital improvement needs and projects that are generally acceptable to improve the ecological diversity, environmental conditions, water quality, and other community benefits. And then the resolved clause is that City Council amend the 2007 resolution to include the following: that any construction, development, grading, or other improvement to areas designated as preserves will be allowed as long as the proposed improvement will improve the ecological diversity, environmental condition, or water quality as determined by the Parks Advisory Commission. And this amendment to the 2007 resolution was actually put in place for the work which is being done at Sister Lakes over by
Right.
Dolph Park.
Okay.
So,
Other questions? Pete?
I have a question about, so in our memo, it was about this summer, you'll be performing 4 soil drillings to look for suitability of the soil.
Correct.
So are you just assuming that one of those 4 will be, well, I guess, what are you looking for, and will you need to drill more than 4 holes? Does
So-
that make sense?
So,
Is this, I don't know if
no,
I'm asking that correctly.
no, that's
but-
that's a perfect question, thank you.
Okay.
So, in a large diameter pipe project, it's typical practice to perform a series of soil borings. They're small diameter borings that drill straight down to the depth of the pipe and even beneath it. And it travels the route of the pipe. So what they're looking for is pockets of good soil or bad soil. I mean, we're mostly concerned about bad soil that wouldn't support the weight of the pipe, that, you know, maybe different construction techniques would be, would result from it. Basically, we're trying to confirm that this is a suitable route for the pipe, that there's no environmental issues that would cause problems during construction. Contractors look for it too as a way to confirm that, you know, they won't have any issues during the construction phase.
Other questions? There's a draft resolution attached to your minutes. Does anyone want to move that forward, supporting this?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you, both.
Thank you.
Moving on, item G2, resolution to recommend the Parks operating budget cover fiscal year 2017 operating expenses at the Ann Arbor Skate Park. Colin?
Yeah, so this is the annual resolution that comes before you to recommend how to cover the expenses at the skate park for the year, for the operating expenses. The agreement between the skate park and the city allows for the city to contribute to the maintenance of the skate park if it's available within a fiscal year. So it's almost the end of the fiscal year, and in reviewing the available funding that we had for the maintenance of parks and structures and facilities like this, we can absorb the cost without it actually being at a detriment to any of the other facilities. So staff actually recommend that the city do so. One of the benefits that we really believe is that this will allow the skate park endowment fund to continue to grow. It's got about $104,000 in it now, which is a very good number. It seems to me prudent to keep that available and allow it to continue to grow for when there is a larger, more capital type expense. We are through we're through 3 seasons and into our 4th, and the maintenance costs have been quite low. This year is the highest that they were because we did do repairs to the grout throughout the park and also the landscaping. These were not surprises, but things that we kind of needed to do soon. So that's the recommendation from staff, is to cover the operating expenses and allow the fund balance to continue to grow.
Questions?
Just a comment that it's clever to put this on the agenda right after we see all the awesome things this
Yeah,
skate
that's
park is
right.
doing, so.
Not his first rodeo. Yes, Alan?
You know, I'll have a comment too. I think, given the large amount of public benefit that we just heard about and many of us have observed ourselves, and recognition of really the financial contributions that were done through fundraising and all the clever work that was done in helping to make the skate park come to happen by the Friends Group, I feel like this is a in-kind sort of support that we ought to provide and help their fundraising grow at this point in time.
I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? I'll note for the record,
I think if I can add just.
Commissioner Appelis has arrived. The best glasses on the commission for the night. Go ahead.
The one thing that I would add, I agree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Jackson, but just to add that it is the responsibility of the Ann Arbor Skate Park per the agreement to cover the ongoing operating expenses. So it is actually a choice to deviate from that. So.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. That carries. Thank you. G3, resolution to recommend approval of a lease with the Ann Arbor Rowing Club for the Bandemere Boathouse. We'll start with Colin. I believe we have someone else there,
Yes,
right?
Julie Janus.
Welcome, Julie.
Yeah, so I can start by giving a little bit of background on this one, too. What is before you today is a resolution that requests that the Park Advisory Commission recommend approval of a lease between the city and the Ann Arbor Rowing Club. For those who may not know, the Ann Arbor Rowing Club has been at Bandemere Park since 2002. And the current lease is soon to expire. That lease was for 15 years. The updated lease before you keeps many of the same conditions while clarifying and updating portions to reflect actual usage. For example, there's items in there that there are times when the rowing club will arrive at the park before normal hours and return after hours or something. And so that's actually memorialized and understood in the lease. The proposal in the draft lease is also to have the term of the lease go for 15 years, like the one which is to expire shortly. And having a longer-term lease like that certainly helps nonprofits when it comes to things like you heard from the skate park. Having the ability to raise funds to continue to improve the site is much easier with that commitment. And that's also consistent with how we treat both the skate park. The skate park has an agreement, I think theirs is 12 years, and Leslie Science Nature Center has an agreement which runs for 20 years. So although it seems a large number in that context, I think it's fairly logical and consistent. And the payments for the lease were actually arrived at by the terms of the expiring lease. There was a number in there, $5,100 annually, that was to be updated by the Consumer Price Index over the period of time before this one started. So speaking to the finance people, they got us the number for that. Other things probably to highlight what would be different in this lease is that those payments in the expiring lease, they went into the Bandemere Fund for the purpose of improvements to Bandemere Park. An example of how they were used was we had in 2015, we had the Bandemere, we improved the docks to have the barrier-free access, which was a expensive project. It was close to $68,000, if I remember correctly, but the fund was able to cover the majority of that. The idea moving ahead is that the rental payments are used for two purposes. Half of it is to go towards the Bandemere Park improvements that would benefit the rowing club and the general public, say for something like potentially lighting the area near the dock. I know it's been a suggestion that the rowing club has brought forward. The other half of the revenue would be for repairs to Argo Dam. Argo Dam, in a sense, provides the playground in which the rowing can take place, the impoundment. And we know that we have some expenses upcoming in years for capital costs to maintain those dams. So this is a start towards approaching how to help fund those things in the future. We would certainly come back to PAC with ideas about how the canoe liveries and their use of the impoundments could also potentially fund that in the future. I think that's most of the background. And questions for either of us, both of us?
Yeah.
I guess a question I have is, with such a long-term lease, you start to think about lifespan of buildings, maintenance of the structures and things like that. And could you give like a quick thumbnail, discussion about the status of those facilities? Are they in structurally sound and things of that nature?
I would certainly ask your opinion of that, Julie. You spend a lot more time there than I do, but, I mean, the
It's,
buildings
the
are,
boathouse is actually just a steel shed, very large, but a pole barn, I think is the term.
Yeah.
So it's not in tremendously great condition, it's not in terrible condition. I think the lifespan on a pole barn is probably 30 years. And none of the other infrastructure, the gas house and the dock are nearly as old. They do require maintenance. The dock requires maintenance for sure. It moves every year. It gets a ton of traffic. The gas house is quite new. I don't see that as a financially significant issue. The boathouse right now doesn't have any issues, so to speak. I suppose something could land on it or damage it, wind could knock on it, but it's at the moment stable.
But we may have to think about if it's, 15 years from now, whatever, there may be a need to replace that building. And I guess the other part is there are other rowing groups there as well that use the same facility. So I presume they sort of share in a somewhat equal way in terms of
so the
those
lease, the lease allows Ann Arbor Rowing Club to sublease to the high schools, so they
Oh, I see.
contribute in
Yeah.
that
And
fashion.
And then the U of
toward-
M one?
That is not in this. That's kind of the building across the way from it.
Oh, okay.
That will be something that we come to you later with, and there's an understanding in the proposed agreement or in the proposed lease that as we have that conversation with the university, if there are things which arise which are impactful to this agreement, we can add an amendment to this to reflect those changes.
Other questions? Or a motion?
Can you tell us a little bit
There's
about
another question.
the subleasing arrangements with the high schools?
Yeah, right now we have a sublet arrangement with Huron High School's Rowing Association and Pioneer Rowing Club. They are separate from the schools with the board of directors. Each of those programs has in the order of 60 to 80 kids. So we rent half of the boathouse to them. The space in the boathouse is divided down the center, and they each have a front half or back half for the storage of their equipment. They also run their programs, so there's a secondary building which we pay rent on separately, which is basically a tractor trailer bed or trailer, and it stores our ergs, our on-land rowing machines. So we each own some of those. They also own some of those. We all pool them together in that facility. Their lease with us is coterminous with this, so they are on an extension until we move this lease through City Council. They both intend to extend their leases also. So that discussion formalizes after this lease is in place.
Other questions? If not, there's a resolution attached. Is there a motion?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
There's no one left to oppose. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Moving on, there's no unfinished business. Item H, does any commissioner have proposed business? That's item I. Moving on to item J, report from the Parks and Rec Manager. Colin?
I will keep it short today since I've been doing a lot of talking, but the parks are in full swing now with school out, and things are going very well to start this season. And I just happened to come across this the other day as I was doing payroll, and I thought that it was interesting. We don't always talk a lot about the amount of employees that we employ. And oftentimes these are first-time jobs for high school kids or for kids in college. And I just think it's important to highlight sometimes how much we contribute in that sense. So I have two numbers. One is the outdoor swimming pools this year have 121 employees. And the canoe liveries, the two canoe liveries have 94. So it's over 200 jobs, which help out kids to figure out perhaps where they want to go and how they want to do it, which is, I mean, is always just very positive. Slightly less positive news, you all received the memo about the pathway at Gallup, which requires replacement. We anticipate that happening very shortly. We're waiting on a final timeline from the construction company. When that actually happens, it should not take more than 2 weeks. And when that happens, we will get the word out as quickly as we can and get the work completed as quickly as possible. And that's everything I have.
Awesome.
Could I just
You can.
suggest that you reinforce the fact that this was no fault of the cities, that this, in as many opportunities as you can. Just because as I've heard people, as I've mentioned to people that this park will be closed, they say, oh, why didn't the city get it right?
Yep.
And, there are many opportunities to be able to say the city actually did do a great job on this, but the asphalt was not up to specification, so.
I appreciate that clarification, and yeah, I didn't
Wasn't
want to
Colin's
get
fault.
into the details of it right now, but it is, that was how it was certainly shared with council and PAC, and as we do the press release for the actual general community, that will certainly be highlighted, but it is, I suppose it is actually worth just to cover again today. The mix that was used by the contractor was incorrect, and that was caught because of additional testing that the city actually did in this instance. So as a result, yes, the path needs to come up right now, but also as a result, it won't need to come up in 2 years or in 3 years as a lemon, and we should be able to get the full use and enjoyment out of it, so.
Thank you. Item K, our representative from the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission is not here, so there'll be no report. Item M, public commentary, 3 minutes per speaker. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak? Henry, would you like to speak? Yeah.
just did.
He just did. Item O, transmittals, they're listed on your thing. Item P, we stand adjourned. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can see it on TV later. You can see your hand on the chair. The whole thing.